For centuries, humanity has looked up, to the skies, to the stars, to new worlds beyond Earth. But what if the next great civilization doesn't rise above us? What if it floats beneath the horizon? The year is 2055. Rising sea levels have redrawn the world map. Once thriving coastal megacities, Miami, Mumbai, Jakarta, now battle relentless floods. Billions live in overcrowded inland cities. Governments crumble under the pressure of displaced populations, food shortages, and economic collapse. But amid the chaos, a new dream begins to surface: Seasteading 2.0. At first, it sounded like science fiction. Floating platforms on the ocean where people could live freely, beyond the reach of traditional governments. But as climate change tightened its grip, innovators, engineers, and visionaries started building what the world once dismissed as impossible. The first prototypes were small, experimental pods powered by solar grids and algae-based biofuel. But within a decade, entire floating cities emerged. Modular, self-sustaining, and autonomous. They were humanity's response to a drowning world. Each platform became a micronation, designed around one idea: freedom through innovation. No borders, no pollution. No politics, just the endless blue and the hum of technology keeping life afloat. These early pioneers called themselves ocean citizens. They weren't escaping the world, they were rebuilding it. And soon the oceans, once symbols of isolation, became highways connecting hundreds of floating nations. But freedom has a price. With independence comes vulnerability to storms, piracy, and power struggles over resources. And as governments began losing control of their populations to the sea, a quiet geopolitical war began brewing beneath the waves. Still, nothing could stop the momentum. From Silicon Valley investors to displaced coastal families, millions began seeing the ocean not as an obstacle, but as a new beginning. Seasteading 2.0 wasn't just an experiment. It was humanity's Plan B, a civilization designed to outlast the mistakes of the past. And as the world watched from the shore, the first generation of ocean-born children opened their eyes to a sunrise reflected on endless water. The age of floating nations had begun, and this time the Earth's future wasn't on land, it was drifting on the waves. By the 2060s, seasteads had evolved from experimental colonies into fully functioning societies. What began as scattered platforms linked by digital trade became vast floating cities, each designed like living ecosystems, blending cutting-edge engineering with the wisdom of nature. At first glance, they looked like enormous lily pads spread across the ocean, hexagonal modules connected by flexible bridges that rose and fell with the waves. But inside, they were marvels of human ingenuity. Every building served a purpose. Transparent domes captured solar energy. Vertical gardens grew food without soil, irrigated by desalinated seawater. Waste was broken down by engineered bacteria that turned refuse into biofuel. Even oxygen was recycled through vast towers of photosynthetic algae, glowing green at night like veins of living light. Daily life on these floating worlds was serene but purposeful. Citizens woke up to the rhythmic pulse of the tides, their homes moving gently with the waves. Children attended ocean academies, learning not from textbooks but from holographic simulations projected above the water. Lessons in sustainability, marine biology, and ethics of freedom. There were no traffic jams, no pollution, no noise. Only soft humming of turbines and distant songs of whales. Healthcare was managed by AI medics who diagnosed illnesses through nanotech scanners embedded in clothing. Every person was connected to a city-wide neural grid, not to control them, but to keep them safe, healthy, and in harmony with their environment. Economies ran on digital currencies backed by renewable energy. The richer your seastead was in energy output, the stronger its economy. It was a new kind of capitalism, one powered by sunlight and tides instead of greed. But beneath the calm, the seeds of inequality began to grow. Some floating nations were utopias, shimmering platforms of glass and steel where innovation thrived. Others, built by refugees and the poor, drifted in isolation, struggling to maintain stability, often trading data or fresh water just to survive. Still, despite these divisions, there was a shared belief among ocean citizens. They were humanity's rebirth, proof that humans could live with the planet, not against it. As one seastead philosopher famously said, "We no longer own land and we belong to the sea." But while people looked to the horizon with hope, darkness was gathering below the waves. The deeper they expanded, the more they discovered that the ocean wasn't empty, and that perhaps they weren't the first to build beneath its surface. Humanity had escaped the land, but soon they'd realize that freedom always comes at a cost. By the 2080s, humanity had fully embraced life on the sea. Millions had migrated to the waves, drawn by freedom from political control and the promise of clean living. To many, the land was a relic of corruption and chaos, while the ocean offered purity and peace. But beneath that shimmering blue horizon, something ancient was stirring. It started subtly, faint vibrations detected by deep-sea sensors. The engineers called them geothermal murmurs. But soon the murmurs grew stronger, rhythmic, almost intentional. AI analysts found patterns hidden within the vibrations, repeating sequences that didn't match any geological behavior. It was as if the ocean floor itself was trying to communicate. Oceanic Council meetings turned tense. Could it be tectonic movement? Or is someone or something sending a signal? Governments of the old world demanded access to the data, but seasteads refused. These were sovereign ocean nations now, and they didn't trust the politics of land anymore. Meanwhile, strange biological growths began appearing on the undersides of several platforms. They weren't barnacles or coral. They pulsed with faint bioluminescent light, forming patterns like circuitry across the hulls. When scientists attempted to scrape samples, the organisms reacted, retracting rapidly and disappearing into the deep. One diver in a now viral video whispered just before losing signal, "They're alive and they're watching us." Public fear spread. Religious groups declared the seasteads cursed for trespassing upon the domain of the deep. Others believed this was proof of an ancient intelligence beneath the waves, perhaps a species that existed long before humankind learned to walk. But the leaders dismissed it as deep-sea hysteria. "Superstition has no place in a rational society," declared Minister Alara Voss of the Pacifica colony. Her broadcast, though calm, betrayed the tremor in her voice. As months passed, energy systems across several seasteads began failing inexplicably. Entire floating blocks went dark for hours. AI systems glitched, communication networks flickered, and always, just before the blackout, the sensors detected those same rhythmic pulses from the ocean floor. When the first seastead vanished from the Horizon cluster home to 12,000 citizens, no one could explain it. One moment it was transmitting daily reports, and the next, silence. All that remained was a swirl of debris and a growing fear that the ocean was reclaiming what belonged to it. For the first time, humans who thought they had escaped Earth's dangers realized something terrifying. They might have built paradise on top of something that did not want to be found. The waves grew quieter, the signals grew stronger, and deep beneath them, in the blackness where sunlight never reached, something began to awaken. The night horizon cluster vanished. Every ocean nation felt the echo. In the Pacific, seismic sensors across hundreds of kilometers recorded a massive pulse. Not a quake, not a wave, something else. The data formed a perfect pattern, 12 concentric rings expanding outward like a heartbeat. Within minutes, the global oceanic network went into silent lockdown. Authorities claimed it was a system error, a mere glitch. But the engineers knew, systems don't glitch in perfect rhythm. Satellite scans revealed a dark void where the seastead had been. Not debris, not wreckage. It was as if the ocean itself had folded around it, swallowing the entire structure. Dr. Imani Rao, the leading biotechnologist of the Atlantic Archaeology, proposed a horrifying hypothesis. The ocean floor may not be just geology. It could be a living substrate, a biosphere far more advanced than we ever imagined. Her research showed the luminous organisms found beneath the seasteads weren't random mutations. They were neural nodes, part of a massive biological network spanning the planet's seabed. In other words, Earth's ocean might have a mind of its own, but even as she presented her findings, corporate leaders dismissed her theories. Pacifica's CEO Ryland Traynor appeared on every broadcast, smiling with political confidence. "We are the future of humanity. We don't answer to myths of the deep." That very night, his city began to tremble. Cameras captured what would later be known as the Rising. Hundreds of glowing tendrils emerged from the ocean depths, translucent structures like jellyfish arms, shimmering in the darkness. They wrapped around the lower decks of the floating metropolis, humming with strange bioluminescent codes. AI translators attempted to interpret the pattern. The result was one word repeated endlessly: Leave. Citizens panicked. Children screamed as the lights flickered red, and the once calm waves churned violently. Entire towers tilted as power systems failed, causing cascading collapses across the upper sectors. Dr. Rao's final transmission from her research vessel was barely audible. "It's not attacking us, it's warning us." And then her signal vanished. The world's remaining seasteads began broadcasting emergency evacuation codes. But where could they go? The land was overcrowded, polluted, and politically fractured. The ocean, once their savior, had turned into a silent adversary. Yet a few refused to abandon their dream. The rogue engineers of Abyss 9, an outlaw seastead deep in the Indian Ocean, announced they had made contact. They claimed to have deciphered the full message hidden within the oceanic pulses. Not a threat, but an invitation. "It's calling us deeper," said their leader Asha Kaur, "not to destroy us, to test if we belong here." As the surviving colonies watched Abyss 9 prepare for descent, the ocean went eerily still. The final phase of humanity's experiment was about to begin, and no one knew if they would return to the surface again. As Abyss 9 descended, the ocean accepted them in silence. No tremors, no resistance, just a vast, weightless calm, as if the sea itself were holding its breath. Through the thick acrylic domes of their submersible pods, they saw colossal coral-like formations glowing with bioluminescent veins. They weren't reefs, they were structures, living architectures that pulsed with the rhythm of a giant organism. The readings showed something impossible. The oxygen concentration was rising, and electromagnetic fields were harmonizing with the city's core frequencies. It was as though the ocean was communicating through resonance. Dr. Asha Kaur, the leader of Abyss 9, initiated the deep frequency transmitter, a device built to translate thought patterns into harmonic signals. When she activated it, the walls of the deep began to shimmer. And then they heard it, a voice not human, not mechanical, a layered chorus, ancient and vast. "Children of the surface, you have touched what was never yours to command." The entire crew froze. "We mean no harm," Asha replied through the transmitter. "We sought survival, a second chance." The voice resonated across their minds like a wave of empathy and sorrow. "You burned the land, you poisoned the skies, and now you sink into the womb you once ignored. But the sea is not your refuge, it is your reflection." Images filled their neural interfaces, visions of past millennia. The ocean showing them the rise and fall of civilizations that had once existed long before recorded history. Advanced species that vanished when they tried to control the deep. It was not destruction, it was correction. "Balance is not owned, it is shared," the ocean whispered. "You were never meant to rule, only to remember." Asha lowered her gaze, tears suspended in zero-gravity droplets. "Then teach us, let us rebuild with you, not against you." There was silence. Then a slow, harmonic pulse rippled outward, lighting the ocean floor like a heartbeat. The voice returned, softer this time. "Then listen and begin anew." At that moment, the glowing structures began connecting to Abyss 9 systems, merging biotech with human engineering. Energy surged through the floating city, transforming it. The once metallic towers turned translucent, powered by living bioluminescent cells that generated infinite clean energy. The ocean was not rejecting humanity. It was evolving with it. Months later, the surviving seasteads resurfaced, reborn as symbiotic cities, living organisms that filtered toxins, grew their own food, and communicated through rhythmic pulses that synchronized with marine life. The age of domination had ended. The age of coexistence had begun. Asha stood at the observation deck, staring at the endless horizon. The waves were calmer now, almost protective. "We finally stopped trying to own the earth," she said softly, "and started to belong to it." And far below in the infinite blue, the ocean pulsed once more, not as a warning but as a welcome. Humanity had finally been accepted by the deep.